What is up, you guys? This is All Day Any Day 1 on the PS4, and I'm going to be giving you another Tera guide video for the Xbox One and PS4. So this one is going to be on how to be a good tank, and unfortunately you're not going to be seeing actual gameplay of me being a tank, but instead of me being my healer. But I am trying, in this video I'm trying to look more at the tank so you can see how the tank is playing. But I am also going to be explaining on how you can be a good tank and what you should be doing and things you shouldn't be doing as a tank. Just like in my previous videos for how to be a good healer and how to be a good DPS. So number one is positioning. As a tank, positioning is one of the most important things you need to get used to. Positioning as a tank is what will generally determine whether your group is going to have a successful run or a not so successful run. For example, if you have the boss's back turned towards the wall, it'll only prolongate the fight because DPSs can't hit the back of the boss or the enemies. Or if you're moving around too much, making it pretty much near impossible for the healer to keep up, and then the healer might not be able to react to some boss specific mechanics from the boss. For example, if the boss swipes left, but he's moving around too much, and then he ends up swiping to the other left, which is on the right side that the healer's on, or was the right side, then I mean it just makes it a little confusing for other players pretty much. Positioning for the tank is pretty much more important than any other classes as the healer or DPSs, mainly because you're the one that's setting up the positions for those classes. So if you're positioned in the middle, that's where generally most tanks position themselves, is the middle, because it's easier for the DPSs to just hit the back because it is an open space, open area, and then it's easier for the healer to, you know, run around and heal if they can't see their allies. But yeah, you really want to make sure you're positioned in the right spot for your healers and your DPS. It's not just for yourself, for your own safety, but it's to benefit your team. So for the second one, it's going to be blocks and counters. As a tank, you need to get used to using blocks and counters pretty often, and trying to get the successful blocks or counters to avoid any serious damage. Although there are some attacks bosses will do to you that are not blockable or able to be countered, but most can. For the attacks that aren't blockable though, you just need to try to get used to dodging. So just learn the mechanic and just dodge it as often as much as you can. So for the third one, it's about keeping aggro. As a tank, you want to keep as much aggro as possible. There will be enemies who will just pretty much ignore you, which means DPSs need to kill those enemies first. Meaning there will be enemies who just runs right by the tank and goes straight for the healer, or the other DPSs. Like I said, DPSs need to go for that enemy first. But for every other enemy that doesn't ignore the tank, you have to keep their aggro. There will be times where DPSs will put out tons of damage, or Mystic may summon a Thrall, or just whatever, some other random stuff happens. You want to be able to make sure you can still grab that aggro and take it right back. Otherwise, I mean, your team will most likely wipe because you don't have the aggro. So what I would suggest is having aggro crystals and an aggro brooch. Anything that pretty much increases aggro or your threat is what you want to have. So for number 4, it's going to be about enraging. So as a tank, you can enrage bosses, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. And the way you can tell a boss is enraged is their health bar will start flashing red. Their bosses will generally enrage by themselves over time, but tanks do have the ability to enrage the boss. I don't know exactly how long their cooldowns are. I believe it's like a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. Probably longer or less. But the reason why it's a good thing is it allows your DPSs to do a lot more damage. So your DPSs are going to be benefiting from this. As a tank, as yourself, it's somewhat not a good thing because you're going to be taking a little bit more damage. Sometimes it depends on the type of boss. Some bosses will have faster attack speed. Some bosses will just hit a lot harder. Maybe they'll just even have both attack speed and increased damage. But that's where the successful blocks and counters come in. And some bosses that are enraged will have it to where they can't even, or you won't even be able to block through their attacks anymore just because they're enraged. But most of the time, you'll still be able to block their attacks unless you're doing the 417 dungeons. I don't believe their attacks are blockable, whether they're enraged or not. But you only want to make sure you use the enraged ability on the bosses if your DPSs are ready for that. Meaning they're buffed and they have their cooldowns done, they're all ready to, just go ahead and put out a lot of damage on the boss. So the fifth one is you're pretty much the leader. Not necessarily the leader of the group, as in you tell people what to do and whatnot, but you're the one who should be initiating the fights, meaning you go in first for every encounter. If the DPS or the healer decides to go in first, then so be it. If they die, then they die. They just can't really blame you for their death because you are the one that is supposed to go in first. So they have to wait for you to initiate the fight. So the reason why you want to be the one to initiate the fight is because that way you get aggro first. Meaning the enemies will see you and they'll go straight for you first versus just ignoring you and going for someone else. But you want to make sure your team is ready. You don't want to just go in there without your healer, because if your healer is doing something else, they might end up getting killed or you might lock them out. Not just the healer, but DPSs as well. You just want to make sure everyone's ready. You can just do like a little ready check and everyone should be good. So for the sixth one, this one kind of goes hand in hand with each other for the healer and the tank. So the healer and the tank are pretty much like the best buds in MMORPGs because the tank benefits a lot from having a really good healer, and a good healer, or just a healer in general, benefits a lot from a really good tank. You can obviously benefit from both of them as a DPS, but not as much as those two benefit for each other, because a tank can only take so much damage and block so much. A DPS can't heal you out through all the extra damage. A healer can though. And then a healer benefits a lot from the tank because a tank is the one that's keeping the aggro. They're the punching bag. And they also can pull enemies away from certain areas where a healer needs to be. For example, if an ally, one of your dead allies is on the ground and there's a bunch of enemies on top of them or the boss is on top of them, the tank can pull them away so that the healer can go in and revive them, because most of the time a healer won't run in the middle of all of that to revive an ally. Sometimes they will. Sometimes you'll have the daredevil type of healers, but you also have healers who want to play it safe, especially if you're like, let's say you're at the boss, the final boss, and you don't want to risk it because it's just you two don't have neophytes or any other revives. So you have to kind of have that tank pull the enemies away from that danger zone so that the healer can revive so that the healer can revive their allies. So for the last thing about being a good tank is you want to learn what you can and you cannot take. And what I mean by this is there will be mechanics, like I stated earlier, that you will not be able to block or just outright take the hit. Because a lot of the times in the 417 dungeons and up, a lot of those attacks will be one-shots. So you do need to learn the boss's mechanics. And I've said this before in many other videos as well for the DPSs and the healers or supports, that you need to learn the mechanics. And obviously it's important for all classes to learn the mechanics, but as a tank you really want to learn specific boss mechanics to see what their one shots look like, or when they're going to do their one shots, because if you go down, it's gonna be hectic for the healers, because like I said, you are the healers, pretty much the healer support, because if you go down, then the healer is the one that's going to most likely take secondary aggro, or a DPS that's going to be putting out a lot of damage, or that is putting out a lot of damage will be the one that's taking the second aggro. So if you go down, then it's not game over, but it is just going to be a lot harder for them to survive and win. So you want to make sure you quote unquote study the boss's mechanics or enemies' mechanics, or pretty much anything and everything, so that way you can make it easier for yourself and your group. But that's pretty much it with this video. Hopefully this helps you guys out a lot. If it didn't, I'm sorry, because I mean obviously it would help more if I had actual tank footage, but hopefully this explanation did give you guys a few good tips on how to be a good tank. Now, I'm no expert in tanking, but I have tanked in previous MMOs, for example, like ESO and Neverwinter and DC Universe. So I kind of have a good gist on tanking, and I did tank in the beta of Tera as well, but it's just not something I enjoyed doing as much. I enjoyed doing healing and DPSing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions or concerns of anything, let me know down in the comment section. If you have any suggestions on, I guess, tanking tips as well that you would like to throw out there for your other players who are just starting out tanking, go ahead and put that down in the comment section as well. If this helps you out at all, or if you like the video, go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe. And that's pretty much it. This is All Day Any Day 1 on the PS4. Have a good day, good night, and peace.